Hello and welcome to Twerk, a space where you can hear and read about some amazing people, the fantastic jobs they do, and the paths that led them to where they are today. I'm here with Jodie. Hi, Jodie.
Hello.
Right, so you are, we're going to say colour analysis, colour coach. You're actually a whole lot more than that, which we're going to come into. And we will come into all of that. But I think to aid into the coming into all of that, we're going to track back, as always.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about little Jodie. And we're going to ask what little Jodie was like. What was she into? What was she like?
So little Jodie was always fairly academic, but I was a dancer. So I was young, I did ballet and tap and show business. So that was all I did. I didn't know what the new films were. I didn't watch TV because I was always at dance class.
Right, okay.
So like 4 nights a week, all weekend,
you were dancing.
I was dancing. And that happened all the way through school. I liked school. I liked maths. I liked drama.
Yeah.
But I was quite academically competitive, I guess.
Okay.
I went to a grammar school for my A-levels, so I transferred to a slightly different school.
So that's basically where you have to pass, you have to get grades to go there,
I had to get specific grades, so rather than going to college, I transferred to the local grammar school.
Yeah.
And I did theatre studies, maths and economics, which don't really go together. I just knew I enjoyed
you did what
performing arts. I enjoyed the people. It gave me a confidence that I could speak to people. I always had a part-time, like my mum and dad were entrepreneurs. So my dad was from a family of shopkeepers. So they had their own business. So from like the age of 12, I would help out in the shop. As soon as I was 16, I wanted what I termed a proper job with a different employer.
Yes.
So I always had several jobs on the go.
Yeah.
But I used to get good grades at school and I used to do all my theatre work, and that was kind of my priority.
So you very much sort of did subjects that you liked and were good at?
Yeah, I wanted to get good grades. I wanted things that I knew that I could do, and maths was definitely my strength at school.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Which I think a lot of people are just going to find unusual for what you do now.
Yes.
The competitive side, though, where did that come from, do you think? Is it sibling rivalry or...?
So I have a younger sister. Not sure if we're overly competitive with each other.
Okay.
But I think it was definitely, like, I was the first person in my family to do high level education. So everyone left school at 16, but I didn't. I wanted to stay.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to university. So I wanted to do the best that I could in any scenario I was in, I guess. And so that's why I was quite competitive.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So college, theatre studies, economics, maths, leave college. What's the plan?
I went to university. In
Manchester.
Yeah. I wanted to get as far away from home as possible.
And
one of my criteria.
Was home?
Home was Essex.
Essex. Oh, that is quite far.
So 270 miles away.
Yeah.
And I did a radio production degree. I started a radio production degree.
Okay.
So it was a hybrid course. So it was radio production and then some business studies, business management on the side.
Okay.
And I loved it. Was a very practical course. I loved all of the radio production. But by the end of the first year, I kind of worked out that I was quite good at the business part of my degree and that I wanted to change and refocus. So I actually changed my degree to be a business management with media degree. So I lent into all of the business modules, picked up some more, dropped my radio production modules, kept with some of the media theory aspects of the course, and essentially had a business management degree.
Okay, so how far into the degree were you?
At the end of the first year, so I was able just to transition and it was fine. I didn't have to do any extra time. It was just the refocusing of the priority of the syllabus.
Okay. Interesting. And I guess so that theatre side of you then, what was that still going on out of school now at uni, or
I didn't.
And obviously we're hitting the clubs, we're busting some moves.
Yeah, I've always been very social. Like everyone always used to be really surprised at my grades because they're like, yeah, but you're always at the party. I'm like, yeah, I am.
The last one to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't continue any of those hobbies really. So I literally left home at 18 to go to university and just dropped everything.
Wow. And went very businessy and leaned into that side of you, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did that. I got first in my degree, which
very good.
Again, quite shocking. But I work hard, but I've never worked at the expense of enjoying things.
Yeah.
But I've just always been relatively academic, so it's not. It never came that hard to me in a way. Just backtracking a little bit, in my second year of university, I spent the summer working in America. So I went and worked at a TV studio in a ski resort in Colorado.
Oh gosh, right. A TV studio in a ski resort.
Yeah, so my dad's family shop was a ski shop.
Right.
So we used to go skiing.
I was going to say, I need to connect the dots of this context.
Somehow. So we used to go skiing.
Yeah.
My granddad had some friends that were ski instructors in the ski resort in Colorado.
Yeah.
And we'd been there a couple of times on big family holidays.
Okay.
And then as part of my course, we had to do some work experience. So that work experience could be anything vaguely related to your degree.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to see if I could get any work at the TV station in America. So I
Why was the TV station in the ski resort?
Well, just because it's like tourist TV. So they do like it's only
every day?
Every day. They only do maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, but it's kind of like a very local, small version of This Morning. And they send someone out to the local market so that then when people are on holiday, they come, they turn the TV on, like, oh, this market's on today. Should we go here? Or that we could go whitewater rafting and someone's done, it's a tourist driver.
Okay.
So I used to run their reception and I did their sound studio board thing. I did some filming. So it was just a fun summer. Anyway, while I was there, I met an American student who wanted to be a management consultant. I didn't know what a management consultant was, but I decided to read into it. What is a management consultant? So I read up on it and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. And it was mainly talking about, like the big 4 accountancy companies and how you can be a consultant. And it sounded really exciting. Yeah.
So
I thought, that's what I want to try and do. So when I was applying for roles, I was looking at the big accountancy companies. I was like, I like maths. Why wouldn't I do that?
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I applied to the big graduate schemes in London. The first interview I had was with the National Audit Office, which is essentially the public sector version of a management consultancy. And after quite an intensive interview process, they offered me a job before I'd had interviews at any of the accountancy companies. So I took it because I had a letter that said, we're going to give you X thousands of pounds. And at the time I was like, wow. It wasn't very much money, but at the time it felt massive. So I took that job and moved to London.
Yeah.
So it was the first time I suddenly realised I was going to have to work hard to achieve something. Because up until that point, I'd always found school things relatively easy. But this is intense because there's a lot to learn. You're doing it whilst you're working. If you fail your exams, you get sacked. Like the pressure is real.
Right.
So it was nice though because they have big intakes of graduates. So when I started, there were about 70 other grads that started in my academic year. And they kind of became my new uni friends because we're all the same age. We've all moved to London. We've all moved for this job. Very few people knew anyone else. So you turned up to work. They were your work colleagues. They were your friends People lived together, they
Yeah.
studied together, we socialised together. It was uni part 2.
Oh.
But
So
harder
for another
work.
3 years, yeah.
For 3 years.
And you
yeah.
got paid.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 years later, what's...
The day I qualified, I resigned. Because you have to do...
Kicking the teeth.
You have to do 3 years to qualify, and there's exams, but there's also like a time requirement. And
So literally you got your results through?
Yep. And I resigned. I had a job to go to, but
Right.
that was my plan. I didn't want to work in public sector. I wanted to work in media because that's where my interest was.
Yes.
So I had secured a job at a company called Hit Entertainment.
Yes.
They're a royalty company. So that's where I went, and I was in a media company. So it was like my first role in commerce. It was still an audit job, so that was kind of my transferable skill set that I was taking. I didn't stay there long. It was a small team. I was quite ambitious. I wanted to keep going. So I then got a job with Sky, which for me was kind of top of the tree.
Wow.
You know, that was quite
Yeah.
aspirational. And as much as I liked working for Sky, I was like, my finance job's very repetitive.
Yeah.
Like every Friday is the same. Every last Friday of the month is the same.
Yes.
It's very, very routine based.
Which if people like that, it's perfect.
Absolutely. But for me, it wasn't what I
You've got
wanted
this
to
little
do.
drama-y person over here, hadn't you, going, I need
Yeah.
something.
So I then got a job at Warner Brothers. So this was when DVDs were a thing. So I worked at Warner Home Video, and I loved it. It was amazing because all the people were relatively extrovert. They all had a personality. Everyone was like, I work at Warner Brothers. You know, it was very high energy workplace.
Yeah.
I still worked in finance, so compared to other teams, we had a relatively less extroverted team. But I loved it, and I worked really closely with the sales team, and I learned how to help the sales team make better commercial decisions. So
Yeah.
I was kind of there to be their moral advisor to let's negotiate this deal, let's make it bigger, but let's make sure we've got the right contract in place. So let's make sure we've got the right terms in place, that kind of view. And so I became a commercial finance person. And then I ran the commercial finance team. And then there was lots of changes at the company, and essentially they, as a lot of companies have, commercial finance is often seen as finance doing some of sales' job for them. So in lots of companies, commercial finance doesn't exist. The sales team just have stricter rules they have to comply with.
Right.
So when there was a bit of a shake-up, they decided that some of what my team did should actually sit with the sales team, and therefore my job became much more finance reporting, month-end focused again, which is what I'd moved away from when I was at Sky. I then got an opportunity to move to Ernst & Young to go and be a management consultant, which is what I'd wanted when I was in America 10 years prior. So I was like, oh yes, management consultant, that's where I was aiming for. And
We go full circle.
that job came through, so that's the job I went and took. So I worked at Ernst & Young, again in the finance team, but it was mainly around process improvement work, building shared service centres, doing a lot of process redesigning for companies.
Yeah.
It's the first time I lived out of a suitcase. I mean, I had a job. You didn't really know where you were going to work. You are a pool of resources. You get allocated somewhere. So my office was London Bridge. The first job I took, job I was given, was in Germany. And I used to commute every Monday, and I'd come back every Friday. And that was just the expectation. And that wasn't out of the ordinary. That was just what you did.
For how long?
I did 9 months in Germany.
Yeah.
Between Germany and Sweden. And at the time, that's when I moved out of London, kind of moved near here where I am now.
Yeah.
I got married, and I had my first 2 children while I was working at Ernst & Young.
And still travelling, or?
To a degree. But I knew when I had my second child that I wasn't going to be able to go back. At the time, my husband was working in London, relatively long commute that we were both doing.
Yeah.
Had 2 young children that needed to go to nursery. We can't both be stuck at the end of the same train line because if it gets cancelled... So the plan always was that I would need to find something else to do, which would mean that I'm a car journey away from nursery rather than us both being at the end of the wrong train line if something went wrong.
Yes.
And that was quite difficult for me, I think, because up until that point, I'd always been chasing my next role.
Yes, I was going to say.
I want that position, or I want to work in that company, or I had quite a clear journey that I was travelling.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because up until that point, up until my first pregnancy, me and my husband at the time were relatively on equal par. Like, our roles were very similar.
Yeah.
I met him at the National Audit Office, so we'd trained at the same time. You know, we were relatively equal in the career world.
Yeah.
And then I take my first maternity leave. You know, I miss out on that next promotion. Then I have another baby. Then I'm suddenly moving out of London.
Yeah.
And I have to kind of tape my expectations and ambitions of what I'm able to do, which was hard, actually.
Yeah.
But I found a job, a media company, relatively local, and I was quite excited about working with another brand. But the job, it was hard. Not the role, but the dynamic, the culture wasn't quite what I was expecting it to be. So after about 18 months, I decided to move on. And at this point, my children are slightly older. My eldest is now at school.
Yeah.
My youngest is a little bit older, already had all the germs and diseases. So that was kind of helpful.
Yeah.
And I think I had taken a little bit too much of a step backwards. So I was like, I need a job where I feel like I'm doing something ambitious, something that's like a step forwards. So the one good thing about that first role I had taken is commercial finance isn't a role that's in every company. And in that company, I'd actually worked in sales operations. So I was back working with the sales teams that I like to do.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. And I was like, okay, I've kind of redefined myself from commercial finance into sales operations.
Yeah.
So then I found a job in Greater London, an American software company for sales operations.
Okay.
So that's where I went next. And actually, I've been at that company for nearly 7 years.
This is what's brilliant about this chat, is that people are going to listen to this chat, and if there were no visuals to go along with this, you would sound like a very different person,
yes,
wouldn't you?
I would. Yeah, I would.
Right. How has this come about?
So, I, as a child, along with all of my dancing and theatre work, was always really interested in houses. I wanted to own a house. I was like, yes, I want to learn how to drive when I'm old enough, but I also want my own house. That was like a real goal. And it was the 90s, so there was many a low-budget TV programme on the BBC about house renovations, changing rooms
Lawrence,
was at its peak.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And I learned how to rag roll paint and all of the really trendy 90s trends.
Well, even when you were in your flat, sort of...
Well, when I say I learned, I mean I visually learned. I didn't actually learn.
Yes, yeah.
And it's always really interested me. And then in... Which year are we in? I want to say 2021.
Oh, so we're in COVID.
Post-COVID.
Yeah. We're still a bit COVID-y.
A bit COVID-y. I'd had some quite significant changes in my personal life, and I bought this house, and as part of trying to find my, I guess, passion for life again, trying to work out what I wanted to be doing.
You are.
So I knew, I'm sole income of this household. I need to provide a home for my children. So leaving my sales operations director role was never going to be an option for me. But I had a creative need that wasn't being satisfied. And at this point, I hadn't done any accountancy learning or any kind of further education for a long time. So I decided I was going to take a course to do colour consultancy for personal styling.
Yeah.
So I did it and I loved it. And it was really interesting going through it because I've always really found it relatively easy. Like, to me, I can see colour in a way differently maybe to how some people see colour. And then as soon as I'd done that, I had been planning a big house renovation here. So I decided to start slowly planning my house, what it was going to look like. So when I bought this house, I bought it off a couple in their 80s, and it was their parents' house. So it had never been on the open market since the 1930s. So the whole house was brown.
And it looked completely different.
Completely different. Yeah.
Wow.
So
even structurally, even in terms
so this bit we're sitting in here is brand new.
Yeah.
The house is quite, I think the only thing really that's left of the house are the internal doors. Everything out, like new stairs, new everything.
Oh my God.
So I was planning this really big project, which was like my passion project at the time. I knew what I wanted to do, and it was kind of a real opportunity to build the home that I wanted to live in.
Yes. It's so empowering.
Yeah, and I didn't...
You're divorced, you're figuring yourself out, you've got this... Yeah.
And it needs to work for
you.
Me and my children, and it needs to, space-wise, be really flexible for the next however many years. But I didn't want to tone it down because I didn't need to compromise. I could just do what I wanted to do to create the environment that I wanted to live in. Because to me, it brings me energy and happiness, I guess, in a way. I remember, years ago, I'd buy like a tea towel that I liked. And it makes me smile when I see it in the kitchen. I'm like, but what if everything in your house is like that? Like every single little thing in the house either has a memory or it makes you giggle or there's something about it. And if you build a home that's full of items that have a emotional connection,
that are full of joy,
then I can't walk through my house and not love being in my house because I love my house. So
I bloody love your house.
It's not for everyone.
I may not leave.
It's not for everyone, and it's definitely not somewhere that
totally for me.
Everyone would feel relaxed. Some people find it quite intense. But for me, I do find it relaxing.
Yeah.
Like I get energy from it. But there's a lot of pattern clashing. There's a lot of different colours, but for some people that's almost too noisy, but for me it gives me energy, so that's why I really like it. So whilst I was doing the renovation, I was like, well, while I'm doing this, I may as well do an interior design course because why not?
Because you've got enough else going.
Exactly. Well, I mean, what else am I going to do with my late nights?
My 1 hour at night.
So I decided to do that because, again, at this point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'd done my colour analysis and I'd started doing a few of those. But my house, like, I wanted it to be really good. And I was like, okay, well, I might learn something. I'll find out how to make sure that I choose the right colours. So I decided I just wanted to learn more things. So I decided to do a course. And I did it, and I learned how to do floor plans and spatial planning and all of those things.
Wow.
But I was really interested in about how do you build rooms that evoke the mood that you want or the atmosphere that you want.
Yes.
And that was really important to me. And as part of doing that, I really started to buy into this concept of, I had kind of lost my identity with, being a mother and just evolving through my 30s and starting to turn into my early 40s. And I didn't recognise myself anymore. I was like, I need to almost give myself permission to be authentically me.
Yeah.
And then the more I look around, I see so many women in exactly the same situation. So I kind of have an ethos, and it's not fully implemented yet, I guess, but my ethos is to try and ensure that every woman feels they have the permission to live their loudest life. So whether that's their brightest home or their brightest wardrobe, or they just make the right career decision for them personally, they have that permission to go and live that. There's not everyone who wants their hallway to look like my hallway, but maybe they want it to be a little bit of pink or a little bit of something that it isn't currently. And it's how do we get from where I am now to being in a home or having a wardrobe that is mine, and I'm feel my most empowered in that. And that's what I'm that's what I want my colour brand to be.
But can't, like, people can hire this for photo shoots and stuff?
Yeah, so the house is now listed with shoot agencies for filming, and there's quite a few photographers that do kind of small business branding, and it's a fun environment. So it suits a lot of personality-led businesses, so they can hire it for photo shoots. Because it... I have this house, I want to share it with the people, and it will be a small group of people that like it, but why not share it with those people? And I've got it now, so I want to share it.
Yeah. Wow. So where does this go then? I mean, obviously you kind of know what you want to do, but that in itself feels like, because also it's like, how do you pitch that right to make sure that the right women find you?
Yeah.
For the right,
and I think
tricky,
it starts with the very tangible things that I can help people with.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to understand what colours they should be wearing for their skin tone, I can do that, colour consultancy. Yeah, so so at the moment I do colour consultancy kind of on the weekends.
Yeah.
I have a styling course to help people. It doesn't teach them anything about fashion. It's really about people just spending a little bit of time redefining who they want to present themselves as.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Because you get into habits, and especially with women, like weight can come into it, and lots of people will say, "Oh, I really want to wear that, but I'll do it when I'm thin." Or like, you need to start living as your authentic self today, and it's how do you help people get into that mindset?
But the issue here as well is women not finding themselves until they're in their 40s, though.
Yeah, because if I had a fuck it era in my 20s...
Yeah, or even in your early 30s.
It'd be very different.
Yeah. Thank you so much. As you've probably gathered, I could have talked to you and waffle at you for hours. Wow, thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks.
If you would like to hear more about this chat, see some pics and read about how to get started in this industry and/or this role, then please go to our website www.twerk.org. The link is in this podcast page and across our socials. Sincere thanks.